Imagine a village on the edge of freedom, a people counting down to independence, songs rising into the night as drums echo hope. Yet beneath the celebration lies something darker, a secret, a betrayal, a truth that could tear everything apart. This is not just the story of a nation gaining freedom, it is the story of what freedom costs. Written by Ngugi Thiong'o, one of Africa's most powerful literary voices, a grain of wheat draws from lived experience. Born in colonial Kenya in 1938, Ngugi grew up in the shadow of British rule, and his family was directly affected by the Mau Mau struggle. His brother fought in the force, his mother was detained, and violence was not something he imagined, it was something he witnessed. So, when he writes about betrayal, sacrifice, and resistance, he is not guessing, he is remembering. Set in the final days before Kenya's independence in 1963, the story follows ordinary villagers whose lives have been shaped by war, detention camps, love, silence, and guilt. At the center of it all is one man, quiet, respected, almost invisible, Mugo, a man everyone calls a hero, a man hiding the truth. Because when the drums stop and the celebration begins, someone must answer one question: who betrayed Kihika? And when that answer comes, nothing will ever be the same again. If you are watching this presentation and you have not subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Kindly subscribe for more of such videos. Now, let us dive right into the presentation. Executive Summary. A Grain of Wheat is set in the days immediately before Kenya's independence in December 1963, Uhuru Day. It follows the villagers of Thibai as they prepare to celebrate liberation, yet each character is burdened by secret guilt. The story centers on Mugo, a quiet villager admired for heroic acts in prison, who secretly betrayed their hero Kihika to the British. Other key figures include Gikonyo, a released prisoner whose wife Mumbi has a child by his rival Karanja, and General Rogo, the Mau Mau leader seeking a traitor. This retelling will cover all central events and characters: Mugo's hidden betrayal, Gikonyo and Mumbi's suffering, Karanja's duplicity, and their confrontation at the Independence Day ceremony. We describe how Mugo's surprise confession at the Uhuru gathering transforms the community. Then the analysis addresses Ngugi's major themes: colonial oppression, nationalism, betrayal, and forgiveness, using scholarly sources for verification. Historical context and setting. Ngugi Thiong'o wrote A Grain of Wheat shortly after Kenyan independence, drawing on his own experiences under colonial rule. In Ngugi's biography, this era was deeply personal. His mother was tortured and his half-brother killed by British soldiers, so he witnessed the brutality firsthand. The novel's backdrop is the Mau Mau uprising 1955-60, when Kikuyu villagers waged guerrilla warfare against British settlers. In 1950, Britain declared a state of emergency, outlawing the rebellion. Decades of land seizures and forced labor had built tremendous Kikuyu resentment. By 1963, the struggle had fundamentally changed Kenya. Colonial rule was ending and nationalist fervor was high. As Independence Day Uhuru approaches, Thibai's villagers feel entitled to self-rule. As characters state, Kenya is a country for black people, even as memories of oppression scorch lands, detention camps, plantation labor remain fresh. This context of colonial exploitation and the dawn of nationalism suffuses the novel's plot and themes. Plot narrative. A Grain of Wheat unfolds its plot primarily through the converging stories of its main characters, with many events shown in flashback. Here is a chronological retelling. Early years, seeds of rebellion. In the late colonial era, Kihika is a young, charismatic Mau Mau leader. In 1953, he leads a daring ambush on the Mahi police station and personally kills District Officer Robson, a notorious enforcer. Kihika becomes a hero to the villagers of Thibai. To evade capture, he hides with his sister Mumbi's friend Mugo, believing Mugo to be trustworthy. Mugo indeed hides Kihika, but fear and greed take hold. When British District Officer John Thompson offers a reward, Mugo secretly informs on Kihika. The British surround Kihika and capture him. Kihika is swiftly executed by hanging in late 1953, becoming a martyr. In Thabai, his death is a devastating blow. The young villagers idolize his name and pay tribute to him as a hero of Independence Day parades. Shortly after, the emergency intensifies. British troops round up suspected sympathizers. Gikonyo and Mugo are both imprisoned for years. In the detention camps, brutality is routine. Prisoners endure beatings, starvation, and forced labor. Even a pregnant woman is nearly killed by a guard. Mugo intervenes to save her life, further burnishing his legend among comrades. Mugo also leads a famous hunger strike rather than give in, inspiring other detainees. These ideals create unlikely reputations. Mugo emerges an unbroken hero in their eyes, while Gikonyo emerges ashamed. Gikonyo himself confessed to taking the Mau Mau oath to secure release, an act he now regards as a betrayal. The camp spawned these men by secret. Mugo knows the truth about Kihika, and Gikonyo has his own guilty secret. Mugo leaves prison silent and humble, whereas Gikonyo returns gaunt and guilt-ridden. Homefront and betrayal. Back in Thabai during Gikonyo's absence, life is desperate. African workers toil on colonial farms. Villagers suffer forced labor and curfews. Karanja, once poor, joins the colonial home guard. By the late 1950s, he has climbed to become the village's forest station chief under the British. He courts Mumbi relentlessly. She had earlier spurned him. After Gikonyo's return is announced, Karanja briefly wins her consent. When Gikonyo unexpectedly walks home, Karanja steps aside, only to find Mumbi alone and vulnerable and consents to have a child with her. During these years, Thompson and his wife live at Jathema Station. Thompson believed in a noble colonial mission, but by 1953 a Mau Mau hunger strike at Rira Camp shattered that ideal. By independence he decides to leave Kenya, disgusted by the violence he witnessed. His wife Marjorie, lonely and bored, briefly seeks excitement. Secondary accounts mention tragic affairs involving her. Karanja eagerly ingratiates himself with the Thompsons, recognizing that his power depends on British patronage. He flatters Mrs. Thompson and uses his privileged position ruthlessly. Ironically, Karanja fears rumors that the British, his protectors, will depart. He panics when he hears Thompson is leaving. When Gikonyo finally returns to Thabai late 1950s, he is horrified. Mumbi has a small son, and he learns the child's father is Karanja. Gikonyo is stunned and shameful. He reacts by shunning Mumbi and concentrating on building a stool engraved with her image, a symbol of his love and loss. Mumbi, in turn, is crushed by Gikonyo's anger and ashamed of the secret. She quietly begs for understanding, but Gikonyo holds a grudge. In their house, silence and bitterness build. Approach of Uhuru. As 1963 dawns, the village prepares for independence. The celebrated leaders General R and LT Coin arrive to organize the Uhuru ceremony. The elders, especially Warui and Wambuku, determine it is time to find Kihika's traitor. They plan a public reckoning on Uhuru Day. Warui and Wambuku also invite Mugo to be one of the honored speakers, given his reputation. Mugo is reluctant, but the elders persist. They send Mumbi to persuade him. That evening, Mugo has uneasy encounters. First, Gikonyo visits quietly. He sits with Mugo outside in the dusk and pours out his heart. He confesses that he lied in prison to secure freedom. Gikonyo explains he did it out of love, but now feels he betrayed the Mau Mau oath and himself. He also bursts into tears, telling Mugo that he found Mumbi with a child and feels ruined. Mugo listens silently, not revealing that he knows more. He replies gently that Gikonyo is forgiven. Deeply shaken, Mugo goes to his hut, haunted but still concealing his own secret. Then Mumbi comes. She speaks to Mugo late at night, desperate and open. Mumbi recounts Thabai's suffering, the forced labor, road gangs, and loss of husbands to detention camps. She says how, after Kihika vanished, No one could fill his role of caring for the people. She even explains how Kihika secretly had once helped her family until she learned he was serving the British, which turned her childhood admiration into disillusionment. Mumbi, now a mother, tells Mugo how lonely she has been without Gikonyo's support. Though humiliated, she still loves her husband. Each detail of her story cuts Mugo to the core, since he knows he added to their pain. Mugo remains impassive outwardly. He simply pats Mumbi's hand and leaves her to pray. This night of confessions is climax. All personal histories have been revealed to Mugo, except his own. Ahuru Day ceremonies. On the morning of December 12, 1963, the Bai bursts with festive energy. A village band plays liberation songs, and villagers dress in rags of green, white, black. The ceremony begins with speeches by Warui, Wambuku and others honoring those who fought. Then a footrace is held for young men. In a turn of irony, Gikonyo and Karanja enter at the last minute, each wanting to show strength to Mumbi. They dash neck and neck, rekindling old competition over her. In the final stretch, Gikonyo slips and falls. Karanja trips over him. Both men struggle. Gikonyo cries out in pain and breaks his arm. Spectators gasp. Gikonyo grimaces, but smiles weakly at Mumbi. It seems almost deliberate, to comfort her. While Karanja pulls himself up, the crowd carries Gikonyo away to a nearby tent. A hush falls. General R approaches the microphone to expose the traitor. Everyone expects Karanja to be named. At the critical moment, Mugo does the unexpected. He stands up out of the crowd. As silence deepens, Mugo speaks quietly into the microphone. It was I betrayed Kihika. For a beat no one moves, then shock spreads. Villagers clutch each other. Karanja freezes in panic. General Rogo halts mid-sentence, yet no one grabs Mugo. One by one, the crowd parts before him. Rather than lynch him, they inexplicably let Mugo pass. Mugo's confession is the novel's emotional climax. The man thought a hero has revealed his darkest sin. His calm acceptance of punishment instead of pleas is itself a heroic act. Even Karanja is too stunned to speak. He realizes fate has turned. The ceremony continues, now somber. Eventually General R finishes the ceremony by praising Mugo's honesty. Though some elders weep, all understand that truth has been told. In effect, the villagers decide that Mugo's confession, rather than bloodshed, is the real victory. Aftermath and resolution. That night, after the ceremony, General R and LT going to find Mugo at home. They quietly explain that by Mau Mau law he must still pay for betrayal. He will get a private trial at dawn. Mugo does not protest. He simply prepares to face them. He says farewell to his few friends and to Thabai's people. As he is led away into the darkness, he seems at peace. His face is determined, as if relieved to finally free himself from the lie that haunted him. The novel implies Mugo will be executed by his comrades, fulfilling the demand for sacrifice. Elsewhere, Karanja slips out of the Bai before dawn. Having lost Mumbi's love and heard Mugo's confession, he knows the villagers will turn on him. He quietly departs, filled with disgrace and anguish. The novel suggests he wanders into exile, his fate unknown. In the hospital, Mumbi waits with other women. A nurse tells Gikonyo that Mugo has stepped forward as the traitor. Gikonyo absorbs this with a burst of emotion. If Mugo could sacrifice himself for truth, perhaps Gikonyo can still make things right at home. In the morning, Gikonyo visits Mumbi with his arm in a sling. They finally speak openly. Gikonyo admits that he has been complicit in lies and cowardice. He had lied to officials, and in withdrawing from Mumbi. Mumbi forgives him without bitterness. They embrace. For the first time, they discuss their shared hopes, including the baby Gikonyo will have with her. The book ends on this personal reconciliation. Thabai's people have faced betrayal and sacrifice, and now a new generation, and a new Kenya, begins in truth and unity. In summary, A Grain of Wheat tells how private guilt and national liberation collide. Key scenes: the hunger strike, Mugo's nightmare confession, the Uhuru Day race and ceremony dramatize turning points. The villagers move from suspicion and silence to a hard-won honesty. By the final page, Kihika's death and Mugo's sacrifice have been acknowledged, and characters find a sense of peace. Major characters. The following table summarizes the principal characters, their roles, development, and ultimate fates in a grain of wheat. Supporting characters, for example, the village elders Warui, Wambui, Njeri. The Thompson's colleagues are omitted to focus on the main arcs. Name, role and relationships, arc development and fate. Mugo, a reserved villager of Thabai, respected especially for heroic acts in prison as a Mau Mau heroine. He is unmarried and lives alone. Secretly, he betrayed Mau Mau leader Kihika to the British. Mugo's journey is from inner terror to moral resolution. Plagued by guilt over Kihika's death, he keeps to himself and refuses honors, despite villagers calling him a hero for a prison hunger strike. When forced to speak at the Uhuru ceremony, he calmly admits his betrayal. This confession cleanses him, and he finds a form of redemption in accepting the consequences. After confessing, Mugo is allowed to return home, but General R arrests him privately. Mugo quietly accepts a traditional Mau Mau trial and execution in the forest. He has accepted his punishment, achieving peace through sacrifice. Kihika, dynamic Mau Mau freedom fighter Mumbi's older brother who led bold raids, for example capturing a police station and killed the brutal district officer Robson. Kihika serves as the novel's martyr. Initially a passionate guerrilla, his capture and hanging make him a symbol of sacrifice. His past deeds and death motivate the other characters. He doesn't appear alive in the narrative present. Instead, his legacy haunts the village. Betrayed by Mugo, Kihika is captured and hanged by the British in the mid-1950s. In death, he becomes the honored hero at Uhuru Day celebrations. Mumbi, Kihika's sister and Gikonyo's wife. Dignified and strong-willed, Mumbi endures much tragedy. She loves Kihika as family and deeply mourns him. Despite earlier conflicts, she once resented him for briefly working for the British. When her husband Gikonyo is imprisoned, she manages the household. Believing Gikonyo lost, she eventually gives into the advances of Karanja, the local chief, resulting in a pregnancy. She feels intense shame and initially repulses Gikonyo upon his return. Over time, she remains compassionate and ultimately chooses mercy. She forgives Mugo and reconciles fully with Gikonyo by the end. Mumbi survives and finds hope at the novel's close. She remains in Thabai after Uhuru, reconciled with Gikonyo. Together they look forward to raising their expected child. Their unity at the end symbolizes Kenya's future. Gikonyo, Mumbi's husband, a former carpenter turned trader. He was imprisoned for 6 years during the emergency. Gikonyo starts as a proud nationalist and loving husband. In prison, he voluntarily confessed to taking the Mau Mau oath to earn release. Although motivated by love, he feels this was a betrayal of the cause and battles guilt. Upon returning, he is mortified to find Mumbi's infant is Karanja's. Blinded by shame and hurt, he spurns Mumbi and obsesses over work. Only after learning of Mugo's confession does Gikonyo begin to see common humanity and seek reconciliation. He learns forgiveness and accepts responsibility for his part in the turmoil. Gikonyo survives and is among the fortunate. By the end, recovering in the hospital from a broken arm, he reunites emotionally with Mumbi. He embraces his role as father and husband, carving a new future with Mumbi and their child. Karanja, a villager who becomes the home guard forest chief under the British. Ambitious and vain, he was once Gikonyo's friend. He secretly has affairs even with Mrs. Thompson. Karanja initially thrives under colonial rule. He courts Mumbi persistently while Gikonyo is away, and when Gikonyo is released, he steps aside, only to father Mumbi's child. Despite being innocent of Kihika's betrayal, the village suspects him due to his arrogance and connections. Faced with collective suspicion and the rumor that the British, his protectors, will leave, he becomes paranoid. His power crumbles at independence, On Ahuru Day, Karanja is publicly humiliated. He even loses a footrace to Gikonyo. Later that night, learning Mugo has taken the blame for Kihika, Karanja abandons the Bai in disgrace. He disappears into the forest. The novel implies he will wander or possibly die alone, having lost everything. General Rogo, revered Mau Mau general, leader of the freedom fighters returning to Thabai, stern, principled, deeply respected. General represents collective justice and honor. He arrives to organize the independence celebration and demand the traitors' unmasking. He suspects Karanja but is rigid about due process. When Mugo confesses, General is taken aback yet honors his pledge. Instead of executing Karanja, he allows the truth to stand. He ensures Mugo gets a trial, accepting personal sacrifice to restore the moral order. Continues as the movement's moral compass. He presides over Mugo's private trial, arranging his execution. By the end, Rogo has fulfilled his duty. He helped reveal the truth and prepared to enforce justice, allowing the Bai to move forward. Koina, second in command to General in the Mau Mau, quiet, steadfast, loyal. Koina is supportive and dutiful, urging action alongside Rogo. He is suspicious of any colony collaborator. Works with General to carry Mugo away. He remains in the Mau Mau leadership, joining Rogo in bringing Mugo to judgment. John Thompson, white British district officer at Jathima Station, Thabai's district. He is married to Marjorie. Thompson begins as an idealistic colonial administrator who truly believed in Britain's civilizing mission. After years of violent conflict, his faith is shattered. He oversaw the Rira detention camp, where a Mau Mau hunger strike and ensuing violence deeply disillusioned him. Near independence, he realizes the futility of his mission. He decides he does not want to be around when whites are no longer in charge, accepting that the old order is ending. By Independence Day, he has relinquished his role. He departs Kenya with the last British, returning home disheartened. Marjorie Thompson, Thompson's wife, a restless English expatriate. She is lonely at the remote station. Marjorie is bored by colonial life and briefly seeks excitement. Secondary sources note she has a secret affair that ends tragically, which fuels Karanja's guilt. However, her personal drama is mostly off-stage in the village narrative. Leaves Kenya with her husband. She does not appear at Ahuru Day. Her affair remains a private scandal. She simply returns to Britain after colonial rule ends. Chronological timeline of key events. 1920s-1940s. Colonial expansion. British settlers force Kenyan tribes off their land. Many Kikuyu become laborers. 1947 to 1951. Growing resistance. African veterans of World War II foster nationalist movements. Leaders like Harry Thuku are killed. Jomo Kenyatta emerges in politics. 1952. State of emergency. Britain arrests Jomo Kenyatta. The Mau Mau rebellion begins. Villagers are rounded up into camps or forced into labor. c. 1953. Kihika's rebellion. Kihika ambushes soldiers and kills the cruel district officer Robson. He is celebrated as a local hero of the resistance. 1953. Kihika's betrayal. Kihika hides in Mugo's hut. Mugo betrays him to District Officer John Thompson. Kihika is captured and later hanged by the British. 1952–1958. Detentions. Gikonyo, Mugo and others serve long terms in detention camps. Mugo leads a famous hunger strike rather than break, cementing his heroic image among villagers. Karanja becomes a home guard official and rises to power in the Bai. Mid-1950s. Kihika's martyrdom. News of Kihika's betrayal and execution inspires remaining Mau Mau fighters and villagers. His memory becomes revered. 1956. Kimothy captured. Mau Mau Field Commander Dedan Kimothy is captured, dealing a heavy blow to the rebellion. Late 1950s. Gikonyo's return. After 6 years in custody, Gikonyo is released. Late 1950s. Mumbi's pregnancy. It is revealed that Mumbi has a young son. Gikonyo learns the baby is Karanja's and withdraws in shame. 1963 days before the 12th of December. Ahuru preparations. Village elders invite Mugo to speak at the celebrations. Gikonyo and Mumbi each confide their stories to Mugo. Gikonyo speaks about taking the Mau Mau oath. Mumbi speaks about Kihika's help in the past. Mugo hears everything but hides his own guilt. The 11th of December 1963. Night vigil. The people sing and pray outside Mugo's hut all night, awaiting the next day's ceremony. The traitor is still unknown. The 12th of December 1963, Ahuru Day. Morning ceremony. The ceremony begins at sunrise. In a friendly footrace symbolizing old rivalries, Gikonyo and Karanja nearly tie. Both stumble, and Gikonyo breaks his arm. The celebration pauses. The 12th of December 1963 later. The confession. General R steps forward to name the traitor. Instead, Mugo stands and confesses that he betrayed Kihika. The shocked crowd lets him pass without violence. The 12th of December 1963 evening. Judgment and departure. General R and Koina come to Mugo's home to take him for a private trial according to Mau Mau code. Mugo calmly accepts his fate. Karanja, shamed and desperate, quietly slips away from Dubai, choosing exile. Gikonyo, recovering in the hospital, hears of Mugo's sacrifice and decides to reconcile with Mumbi, embracing their future together. The 13th of December 1963 and after. Aftermath. Mugo is taken into the forest, implying execution, to atone for his betrayal. Gikonyo and Mumbi reunite, and Dubai begins life in the new nation, with its secrets revealed and old wounds beginning to heal. Themes and analysis. Colonialism and nationalism. Ngugi illustrates how British colonialism has destroyed Kenyan society. Land seizure. Forced labor and violence are everyday realities in Dubai. Characters like General R and Gikonyo fought for African freedom, while collaborators like Karanja and John Thompson embody imperial power. John Thompson and Kihika become mirrors. Thompson, the white governor, once believed in Britain's civilizing mission, but it leads only to violence and withdrawal. A critic notes that in the end, the colonizers' civilizing mission is seen as a myth. The Mau Mau uprising is shown as a natural nationalist reaction to colonial injustice. The story implies that true independence requires overturning colonial structures, even at great cost. Betrayal and guilt. The heart of the novel is the question of who betrayed whom, and the unbearable guilt that follows. Mugo's hidden betrayal of Kihika drives the plot. Kihika himself was a folk hero, but after his death suspicions ran through the village. The novel contrasts Kihika's noble martyrdom with Mugo's cowardice. At the same time, personal betrayals abound. Mumbi, though victimized by circumstances, is seen by Gikonyo as having betrayed their marriage. Gikonyo betrayed his cause by confessing to save himself. Karanja is assumed to have betrayed Kihika simply because he is a collaborator. Each character carries internal guilt. Ngugi suggests that colonialism has sown suspicion between people. Only when Mugo admits the truth do the villagers start to forgive each other. As one critic observes, the novel shows that redemption can only begin by honesty about these sins. Only by owning guilt can the community heal. Memory and history. The narrative repeatedly emphasizes the power of memory and the danger of forgetting or misunderstanding the past. Much of the story is told in flashbacks, showing how the present Ahuru Day is shaped by earlier events. The villagers have flawed memories. For instance, they have long believed Karanja was the traitor because the truth was unknown. The Ahuru ceremony itself is meant as a public memorial, yet it becomes a moment when private truth surfaces. Ngugi seems to argue that national rituals alone cannot heal old wounds. Individuals must remember and confront what actually happened. By recalling each character's story, often starting with mistook impressions, the novel underlines that history is subjective. Only when all the real memories are spoken does history become truthful, as in the decisive scene where Mugo's confession erects the village's narrative. Sacrifice and redemption. sacrifice is a central motif. The title's biblical reference is not incidental. The novel opens with the line, "That which thou sowest is not quickened, except it die." 1 Corinthians. This explicitly ties personal death to communal rebirth. Both Kihika's and Mugo's fates embody this idea. They pay with their lives for Kenya's freedom. Critics note that wheat is not native to Africa, so growing it here demands bloody sacrifice. Ngugi seems to say that independence, like a grain, only flourishes through suffering. However, the ending offers hope. Mugo's sacrifice purges the village's guilt, and the unification of Gikonyo and Mumbi around their future child symbolizes Kenya's healing. In effect, redemption comes after a great price. The story ends on optimism that Kenya can replant itself in truth and unity, its future born from these personal sacrifices. Individual versus community. Each protagonist begins isolated by shame, but by the end is embraced by the community. Mugo was a withdrawn hermit, yet villagers form a respectful guard around him when he confesses. Gikonyo and Mumbi had withdrawn from each other, but reunite in forgiveness. Ngugi implies that independence must resolve personal conflicts for the nation to truly move forward. One scholar points out that a grain of wheat invites reflection on mercy and forgiveness in a community scarred by mistrust. The novel suggests that national independence Uhuru is not just a political moment, but a chance for communal catharsis.